Hey, bitches. Wow, that was weird to say. It's been a little while, hasn't it? This is Editing Jamie, just popping in to, first of all, not apologize for the lack of episodes the last few weeks. Jessica and I have enjoyed a nice little summer break. I know we are getting into fall here, but, who's going to split hairs? It is what it is. I'm very, very excited to introduce this episode that you're about to listen to here, though. A couple months back, Jess and I had the wonderful opportunity to go up to Sacramento and meet actually live and record in person with Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic, a friend of the podcast who has a wonderful story to tell that really just kind of gets into the, issues that do lie within the criminal justice system. So please enjoy this interview with Jeff. Definitely follow him on Instagram, on socials, keep up with what he's doing. He's doing some great work in justice reform, and enjoy the podcast. There will be another episode either out later this week or next week that'll have Jeff's colleagues, Leslie Robinson and Carl Robinson, no relation. I'll have interviews with them as well as talking about a game that Jeff helped produce for people that have been incarcerated. So again, please enjoy this interview, and we will be back soon with our regular content, but we hope that you enjoy this this week instead. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we are back, and we are with Mr. Jeffrey. Wow, if I could speak, that would be fantastic. Jeffrey Deskovic, Esquire. And tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
Sure, of course. So, I was wrongfully imprisoned for 16 years for a murder and rape which I did not commit, that I was exonerated of through DNA testing in New York. So I'm the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has as its mission freeing wrongfully convicted people and pursuing policy changes aimed at preventing that in the first place. So we've been able to get 11 people home that were wrongfully imprisoned, and we were also able to help pass 3 laws aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. So videotaping interrogations, identification reform, DNA database expansion.
Oh, wow.
I'm an advisory board member of the coalition group It Could Happen to You, and we were able to pass an additional 5 laws.
Oh, wow.
So, as a matter of fact, a couple of days ago,
I saw this on your Instagram.
Yes, Governor Cuomo signed into law the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct, so there's an independent oversight board that can investigate allegations of prosecutorial misconduct, which is super important because the prosecutorial misconduct is a factor that runs through many of the wrongful conviction cases. So
Right.
Past that, and discovery reform, which pertains to sharing information between the defense and the prosecution. I mean, previously, evidence and witnesses would be dumped on a defense attorney's desk on the eve of a hearing or eve of a trial.
God.
So we've done that, and then from following our success in New York, we've also expanded out. So we have Pennsylvania, It Could Happen to You, and which, by the way, in all 3 of these chapters I'm going to mention. So myself, the founder of the coalition, Bill Bastick, and one other person were in common to all 3 groups, and the rest of the coalition is made up of people that live in that state. So in Pennsylvania, It Could Happen to You, we're able to help pass automatic expungement.
Oh, wow.
So you would think that it would go without saying that if somebody's exonerated in court, that their record should be expunged.
Right.
But it was not so. And so people
Wow.
who were exonerated have had problems with respect to getting jobs or going for apartments with a record for crimes that they've already been proven innocent of. Yeah.
That's insane.
It really is. So, just to round out, and I'm going to finish answering who I am and why I'm here, by the way. That was just a little context. So our goal in New York is, we want to get rid of the exceptions to videotaping interrogations. And in Pennsylvania, our goal now, we're building support for exonerate compensation, calling that PA is one of 14 states that does not have compensation, and we wanted to have the oversight of prosecutors there. Here in California, again, we want the oversight for the prosecutors, and we would like to get rid of the death penalty because of the risk of executing somebody innocent, as amongst many other reasons. So I became an attorney, and in pursuit of my dream of exonerating others as an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe perhaps most importantly, in a way, I mean, I am the co-owner of the Recharge Beyond the Bars reentry game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here because there's an event there's an event tonight, and it's part of the Life After Time video series, which will feature Recharge. And since I co-own the game, and I'm going to be getting an award, I thought it would be much better if I actually come out here to receive it in person rather than the 2 or 3 minute video appearance, which might not work considering the strength of internet and Zoom.
Of course.
Technological issues sometimes happen.
Yes, and also I think we're all just a little bit over Zoom at this point.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm
Definitely.
totally zoomed out.
Me
Yes.
too.
And just for everyone else's edification, we had done a pre-interview with Jeff a few weeks back, and he mentioned he was going to be in town. We said, we live within an hour of Sacramento. So
we made it happen.
Yeah, so here we are, and we're recording in person because we were going to make this a Zoom thing. But we had the pleasure of being able to do it in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome. I'm a people person, so I really like to.
Us too.
I'm happy to do this in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seriously could not have worked out any better, and the timing was just too perfect.
Yes.
Like, the fact that, you had just found out about the award ceremony, and, we had had that conversation, it was just
Totally meant to be.
It was
Absolutely.
kismet, yes.
Yes.
truly, really and truly. So, just so that the audience knows, let's go ahead and talk about the crime in which you were falsely accused of and convicted for, and,
Sure.
kind of how that looked.
And
Yeah.
I think how you found out about it too. I mean, if you knew about it before you started being, interrogated. And
Right,
such,
sure,
yeah.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the year was 1989. We're in Peekskill, New York, which is Westchester County, which is the suburbs. It's ethnically diverse. It's middle class. So the victim was a classmate of mine who was in 2 of my classes as a freshman, 1 as a sophomore. She knew my name, I knew hers, and that was kind of the extent of it. We were not even really on a high-buy basis. So
Yeah.
I remember there was an announcement made over the Peekskill High School PA system saying that she was missing, and if anybody had any information to go to the guidance unit and share. And I remember that night I saw in the newspaper, the Evening Star, which was the daily newspaper in Westchester, and it said teen missing, and it had her picture. And a couple of days after that, her picture was again in the cover of the newspaper, but just saying teen body found.
Oh, no.
She was naked from the waist down.
Mm-hmm.
So I got on the police radar because of 2 factors. So firstly, the police interviewed a lot of students from the high school, and so I didn't think of it this way then, but I kind of lived a double life growing up. So after school, the apartment complex, where there was a lot of kids that lived there, and in the surrounding areas, I was kind of like the life of the party in a way. So whatever I would suggest would be what we would do. If we're going to ride bikes, play Monopoly, do video games, play
Yeah.
basketball.
It was your idea.
Usually it was my idea.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
A leader.
Yeah, right. But after school, that was after school, but in school, different stories. So the kids there were like a year or 2 older than me. I had skipped a grade when I was much younger, and I suppose it quite caught up to me in high school.
Right.
So they were into organized sports and drinking and party and chasing girls, and I really wasn't into that. I was into the things that I mentioned to you. So in the course of the police investigation, some of those students told the police that they might want to speak to me. So I guess the underlying thinking is people that don't fit in commit those crimes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is, I was a sensitive teenager. This was really my first brush with death, and I had emotional reaction to it, and so the police thought it was suspicious that I would be emotional about the death of somebody that I really didn't know. But that's really not a reason to suspect somebody.
No.
But beyond that, I want to point out that there were free mental health services offered to anyone in Peekskill that wanted it to help people process what had happened.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that murders were pretty rare.
Right.
Reinforcing factor was the Peekskill police got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator.
Good Lord.
And I had the misfortune of matching that.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, God.
So a couple of other contextual factors. So came from a single parent household. Father was never involved in my life at all. And that intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique, where the one officer took on a more aggressive role, the other one pretended like he was my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to look up to the officer pretending to be my friend as a father figure. And the other thing was, prior to being a teenager, the career I fantasized about having when I grew up was to be a cop.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So in all of my interactions with the police, which took place over 6 weeks, half the time they would speak to me as if I was a suspect, and when they would push too hard and I would become frightened and I would want to get away from them, that's when they would switch it up. So Jeff is this junior detective helper theme was
Right.
played up. So they made me the center of attention. You know, they would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me, and my opinions were correct. You know, like I was on the team.
Yeah.
They manipulated you.
Exactly.
Straight up.
Yes, and so eventually they got me to agree to take a lie detector test. They said, "Look, we got some new information. It's in the file. I want to share that with you, but you have to, and you'll be more helpful to us once we do.
Right.
But you have to take and pass this polygraph test." So the next day, instead of going to the high school, I went to the police station for the test. My mother and grandmother thought I was in school because it was a school day.
Mm-hmm.
And they drove me from the city of Peekskill. They drove me across county lines to Putnam County, 40 minutes away by car. So I wasn't able to leave anymore on my own.
Right.
Totally dependent on the cops. I didn't have an attorney present, and it wasn't given anything the entire time I was there. They gave me the brochure, which explained how the polygraph worked, but I didn't understand it.
Right.
But then I thought, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter?
Right.
Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm just here to help out. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Exactly right. Yes, and the polygraphist himself was dressed like a civilian. He never identified himself as a police officer. Never read me my rights. Then he put me in a small room and he gave me countless cups of coffee to get me nervous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then he wired me up literally in the machine, and he launched into his third-degree tactics. And so he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again, and he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours.
Jesus.
Towards the end, he said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test results that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." And so that really shoots my fear through the roof.
Right.
And then a cop pretending to be my friend, he comes in the room and tells me that the other officers are going to harm me. He's holding them off. You can't do that any longer. You have to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear. You know, we're not going to arrest you. You're going to just go home.
So unethical.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Right. So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, not thinking the long term, I was just concerned with my safety. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was, that nobody else knew where I was either, loomed quite large. And then, he's given me this false promise. He's conveyed a threat. So I decided to make up a story based on the information which he had given me in the course of the interrogation. By the time everything was said and done, I collapsed on the floor into a fetal position, crying uncontrollably, and obviously I was arrested.
Yeah.
I was charged with their murder and rape.
That is unbelievable. Yeah, so you were saying that, they didn't let your, mom or grandma know where you were. They took you all the way across county lines for questioning, which is already insane. So during all of these, interrogation process and all of that, as you were a minor, you were 16 at the time, did they really do anything? Did they involve your parents at all, or, your mom rather, or, was there any sort of parental guidance, or, did they have to sign off on a form? How did that look for you?
No, they were not involved. My mother knew that I spoke to them after the fact the first time. After that, she didn't want me to speak to them anymore. But again, I was really raised that police officers are a friend, and, plus you don't quite understand Mom. They want my help to solve the crime, except she understood. I was the one who really didn't understand. So I knew that she didn't want me to interact with them, but again, I was 16 years old, and that's really the age where people growing up, and you start to push back against authority. Some you want your individuality, and we think we know better than our parents do at that age.
Yeah.
So no, they were not involved, and the police knew that my mother didn't want me to speak to them, and so they hid it from her as well. I wanted to mention that if you're 16 years old, you are able to speak to the police without your parents present.
Okay.
you're able to waive your rights at that.
So 16 is like that
age.
cutoff.
That 16 is that cutoff.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure, because I'm, semi-familiar with the, Central Park 5 case, and I know a couple of them were, pretty young.
Yeah.
I think, when I say they were maybe 14 or 15, while the other ones were, older, 16, 17. And I know that there was, a level of, contention when, my kid can't be here interviewing with you guys without my permission. But I wasn't really sure what that cutoff was. And they're also New York native, so that's why I was, a little bit, curious about that.
16 still feels like a really young age to be able to be questioned by the police without a parent present.
100%.
And by the way, I want to quickly mention, I agree with you, but I want to quickly mention also just that the actually parental involvement sometimes makes things worse because the cops are able to co-opt the parents and turn the parents into their a vehicle to help coerce. Like, come on, Johnny, just tell them what happened. We wouldn't have this here if they didn't. So definitely the best thing is really just to ask for a lawyer. If you're a parent, then you should insist that your child be given an attorney, and tell them to ask for an attorney.
Exactly. Awesome. So after you were at this point arrested for this crime, how did that pre-trial and then the trial experience look? Because I know there was some DNA evidence that was involved. That was definitely a point of contention in this trial.
So the DNA evidence did not match me. It showed that semen found in the victim didn't match me, and really that should have ended the case right there.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when that happened, the prosecutor got the medical examiner to commit fraud. So he suddenly claimed that he remembered that he forgot to document medical evidence that he said showed the victim had been promiscuous. So that opened the door for the prosecutor to argue that just because the DNA didn't match me didn't mean I was innocent. She might have slept with yet another person prior to my murdering and raping her. And he was able to get away with that because the victim's parents were not coming to court. So they had no idea of what was being said about her in the courtroom.
That's awful.
Yeah, I mean, bad enough she lost her life, but then you're going to ruin her reputation.
Right.
And then taking it a step further, he named another youth by name that he claimed had slept with the victim. Wow. But he didn't. Legally, you're supposed to, provide a foundation for that. So let's get a DNA test from him.
Right.
Let's call him as a witness.
Let's get some
verbal testimony to that effect.
Right.
But he didn't do any of that. He just made the unsupported argument to the jury. That was aggravated by my attorneys basically not defending me.
Right.
So
did you have a public defender?
I did. And here's how he failed me. He didn't put my alibi witness on the stand. I was actually playing wiffle ball when that crime happened.
Oh my God.
He never cross-examined this medical examiner that was committing this fraud, so never challenged him. He literally asked him no questions.
Wow.
Oh my
Never explained to the jury significance of the DNA not matching me. Never used that to argue that proved the confession was coerced and false. He never should have represented me because of conflict of interest, because this other youth that the prosecutor was falsely saying had slept with the victim was represented by another member of Westchester County Legal Aid. So that conflict prevented the defense from asking him for a DNA sample. It prevented us from calling him as a witness. And another aspect of it also was my interrogation was not videotaped. There was no audio taped, no signed confession, just the cop's word for it. So when they came to court, guess what they left out of their testimony? The threat and the false promise.
Right.
Of course.
So
why would they?
And with no video or audio, it's your word against their word.
Exactly. And I wanted to take the stand, but my lawyer would not allow me to take the stand. So when you're defending a case with a false confession, you have to answer that confession. You have to explain that confession. You have to disprove that confession.
Right.
And bring it all together in your closing argument. But he didn't do any of that. He wouldn't allow me to testify. Sometimes he argued to the jury that the confession never happened at all. At other times he argued it happened but was coerced, and at still other times he was arguing that it happened but it was false. So he had to have come across as somebody that was willing to say anything. Yeah. So then there was some other, really quickly, there was some other irregularities about my trial. So firstly, polygraph results are not admissible in the court
Right.
because they're unreliable
Yes.
unless both sides agree.
Mm-hmm.
So we did not agree, but the judge allowed the polygraphist to repeatedly tell the jury that I failed the test.
Interesting.
And he said, oh, well, because this interrogation happened while you were polygraphed, that's why I'm allowing this in. So he allowed him to say that, but stopped my lawyer from questioning him about what methods he used to arrive at his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So like the results, so he was called as a witness,
Yes.
as opposed to like the results of the test being like submitted as evidence.
Right.
Right. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's important. But
yeah.
but by allowing him to repeatedly tell the jury that I failed, I mean that is allowing him to give the results
Right,
in a way.
precisely.
Right. And so there was that. Then another thing was the victim's clothes had been admitted into evidence, and the jury asked to see her bra, and that was important because that intersected with one of the statements of the false confession where I said I ripped her bra off, and the jury asked to see it, and we thought that was a good sign for us because some bras, the way they're made, you cannot rip it off of the body.
Right.
And that's when the judge said that the evidence, including the bra, had been left in the courtroom over the weekend, and that the janitors apparently thought it was garbage, and so they threw it out.
Wow.
And so it wasn't available anymore.
That's just the most bonkers thing how does that even happen? Like, how do you lose evidence, like key evidence?
Right. And the last thing was the jury sent a note out, because they deliberated for like 2.5 days. They sent a note out asking if we are not able to come up with a verdict, are we going to be sequestered over the Christmas holiday? Meaning, will they have to continue to stay in the hotel, no access to television and newspaper and talking to, really the conversations are even limited with anyone.
Yeah.
And the judge said that they were going to be sequestered. So I've learned many years later that at that point it was 11-1. There was one holdout juror, and they were pressuring him. He didn't think I was guilty. But then when that note was sent out, he said that increased the level of pressure, and they didn't want to be there over the Christmas holiday, and that he didn't want to be there either. And so he switched his vote from not guilty to guilty, simply to get out of there.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
the
many
end,
people failed you, really.
yes, and so the end result of everything was that I was wrongfully convicted of a murder and rape, and I was given a 15 to life sentence, despite the judge telling me, maybe you are innocent. I mean, you would think that a judge would find a way to overturn the conviction.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
there's a lot there that the judge should have been. I mean, as the judge, that's their job to be, on the lookout for these things, these issues, the discrepancies. That's just unacceptable.
And so I was given a 15 to life sentence where I was sent to a men's maximum security prison because I had been charged as an adult and sentenced as an adult.
And that was due to the nature of the crime.
That was due to the nature of the crime. Correct.
How long did that whole trial phase take? Like, how long was that process?
Approximately 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it was 6 weeks of like evidence collection and interrogations and all of that, and
Right.
then once you were actually, arrested for the crime, it was another. Was it like immediately 2 weeks after that was your trial, or like
it was some time. It was nearly a year.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Because this happened when you were 16, and then you were sentenced by 17.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Were you in jail during that time, or were you out on bail?
Yeah, I was bailed out after 35 days, but I was soon institutionalized again, just different kinds. So I thought I was going back to my old life when I got bailed out.
Right.
But there was never going to be any going back to my old life. So they would not allow me to go back to the high school as long as the case was pending.
Right.
I was a hated figure throughout definitely in Peekskill, I dare say somewhat throughout the whole county. So that was it for my friends, and as for the few that did not hate me, I mean, their parents wouldn't allow them to play with me any longer.
Right.
So everything was over, so I felt like my life was essentially over. So I made a suicide attempt, which resulted in my being involuntarily hospitalized for 6 months.
Oh wow.
So then at the end of that, I was really out of that for maybe 2 or 3 months before the trial started.
Okay.
So yeah, I was actually just going to say, so basically you were in the court of public opinion for
Yeah.
a whole year
Yes.
in between this time.
Was there a lot of media?
There really
coverage?
was. Yeah, there really was. There was every time I made a court appearance, there was a guilt presumptive oriented coverage.
Yeah. Does that make you like when you? I don't know if you follow like crime cases now.
Sure, I do.
Do you when you see that? Do you how do you think about that now? I mean, this
Yeah, I
type
cringe.
Of,
I cringe because I'm aware of the prejudicial impact of that and how that can impact the jury pool and it can impact the verdict. I mean, they say that they're not supposed to know anything about the case, but are they honest about it all the time? Do they not learn about it at all? And I don't think that that's true all the time. And I certainly think that can, while sometimes prosecutors are the ones drumming that up, I think it's still other times. That they are swept up in that, and I think it can certainly also influence the judge and what rulings that they make in the course of the trial.
I mean, it's virtually these days impossible to. I mean, especially like if a case has a lot of interest, public interest, to not hear about something or some aspect of it.
Yeah. So in that case, did they actually like when you said that your jurors would have to be held? So were they like jurors from another area? Did they like bring them in, or is it people that were local? Because sometimes when there's like highly publicized cases, they'll bring in a fresh.
Or
I know what you mean. Yeah. So they were all from Westchester County.
Okay. So there's definitely a possibility of and a likelihood, quite frankly, of
hearing about the case ahead of time.
Pre-knowledge.
Pre-knowledge. Yes.
Okay. So when you let's see, where are we? I guess jail. I mean, how? I can't imagine. I just kind of want to cry, even like thinking about being in that position.
Well, not even jail. Full on like men's penitentiary.
Right. Correct. Yes. Yeah.
In New York State.
In New York State. Yes. Yeah. So, very, very dangerous there. I mean, there was in Elmira Correctional Facility. It was maybe like 3 or 4 stabbings or cuttings every day. There was a lot of violence that did not involve weapons. There was a lot of gang activity. I mentioned that I had the bullseye on my back because I was there wrongfully in prison for the rape, so that was always a concern that was on my mind. They had system of maintaining order in the prison where if you were found guilty of breaking a prison rule, they would keep you in the cell 23 hours a day, and you could take 2 showers one week, 3 the next, rather than showering daily.
Good Lord.
They would send you food that was 3 or 4 days old. You could not go to the commissary, which is where you buy your food products, so you're totally dependent on the state, and they put you in a small cage area with maybe a pull-up bar in it. If you were lucky, when you were on that status, that constituted recreation.
Wow.
And you could not use the phone when you were on that status. So there were, there was maybe 6 or 7 times where I was attacked, I was beat up. So I was subjected to those sanctions also, because if you are defending yourself, then that means you obviously were fighting.
You participated, yeah.
Right.
So then the food was terrible. Sometimes it was burned. Sometimes it was not fully cooked at all.
Oh God.
And so there was that, and there was a lot of verbal abuse by the guards to the prisoners, and as I mentioned, there was a lot of prisoner-on-prisoner violence, and it didn't seem to me like the security or the prison administration had any particular interest in really like eliminating or greatly reducing that.
Right.
So that was, and I'll quickly mention that while I tried to utilize the time that I spent there. I got GED, I got the associates, I completed the year towards the bachelor's, but then that silver lining was caught when college education for prisoners was stopped. And while I completed a lot of other vocational trades, the curriculum was obsolete many years ago.
Right.
And many of the instructors were simply there to collect a paycheck rather than earnestly trying to teach the prisoners. So it was just horrible in many different ways.
So while you were incarcerated, so you have attempts at appeals to get out of your situation. How did that go for you? How did that look? And what was that process like for you?
Yeah.
Sure. So in all, I lost 7 appeals.
Okay.
So I went to the appellate division. That's the first appeal. My lawyer argued that I was innocent based on the DNA. So she argued that there was legally insufficient evidence, the prosecution hadn't proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, that the verdict was against the weight of the evidence. She challenged the confession that the method I'd been questioned violated my Fifth Amendment constitutional right. She challenged the polygraphist repeatedly, telling the jury that I failed the polygraph while blocking him being questioned. She brought up the issue that the evidence was thrown out. She raised the issue that the judge was biased, and she had 2 additional legal issues in it. So the appellate division's decision, it said that I was free to come and go as I wanted, even though I'm across county lines. I don't know where I am. I have no independent ways of escape. So they said I was free to come and go as I wanted. So they were ruling that the statements were voluntary. Then they wrote that there was overwhelming evidence of guilt, which I don't get because the DNA didn't match me.
Right.
And then they disposed of every other issue in one sentence. They said they looked at the rest of my issues and found them either to be without merit or not preserved for review.
Jesus.
And they ruled that ruling was 5-0, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So the argument motion was denied in one word. Denied. The highest court in New York, the New York Court of Appeals, they declined to give me permission to appeal to them. So I lost that way. Now that's 3 appeals I lost so far. Then I filed in federal court, and because the court clerk gave my lawyer the wrong information pertaining to the filing procedure, my petition arrived 4 days too late.
Oh my God.
And that was determined to be more important than the issues I was raising.
Fantastic.
Wow.
And so I lost that way, and that ruling was I challenged that ruling at the Federal Court of Appeals. One of the judges there I remember were future U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Judge Rosemary Pooler, and they upheld that ruling. And then my lawyer moved to re-argue that ruling against both of those judges.
Right.
And they asking that all the judges on the circuit hear the case and rule on it. And the re-argument motion was denied. And then the U.S. Supreme Court declined to give me permission to appeal to them. So I've just lost like 7 appeals just then in 11 years. So once your appeals are over, the only way back into court is if you can find some previously unknown evidence of innocence, without, which would probably have led to a different outcome. Without, and so because I didn't have any money to hire an attorney or investigator, I started writing letters. So I wrote letters for 4 years, rarely getting responses. And I did go to the parole board, where because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility, they turned me down for parole. They ordered me to appear in front of them 2 years later, and at that point it seemed pretty certain, and I felt pretty confident that I was going to die in prison.
Right. Because at this point, you'd been there for 11, 12 years.
Well, the appeals were 11, and then I wrote letters for 4, and then I went to the parole board in year 15.
15, because that's when you're eligible.
And then they said, come back in 2 years.
So you're coming on up to 17 years at this point.
Yeah. Coming up on years 16 and 17. Yes.
Yeah, and things are not looking great.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you maintain positivity to keep going and trying to appeal?
Yeah, the following factors. So, firstly, definitely belief in God was one thing. Second thing, I was kind of living from appeal to appeal. So I thought that I just needed to hold on for a year or two till the next appeal was decided, which I was sure I was going to win. Another thing was I used to go to the law library, and so studying the law, I didn't trust the public defender to represent me. And he was a different attorney, but still public defender. So that gave a sense of empowerment. I used to collect articles about people who were exonerated, and so that helped me continue on inspiration-wise. And of course, I was scouring again, what route did they take and who helped them. Another thing was there was another wrongfully convicted prisoner there named Frank Sterling, and we used to get together every 6 weeks. We did that. We kept each other going for 13 and a half years, and I'll mention that he was exonerated by DNA a couple of years after me. So he wasn't simply claiming to be innocent, and I naively believed him. No,
right,
he actually
I'm sure
was.
That also happens. But.
Right, but he actually was innocent, and so it was, and then another thing was that, I needed to get out of the prison for a couple of hours, so I used to engage in this elaborate delusion where when I would play basketball or play chess or play ping pong, I'd pretend I was a professional player, and so was everyone else. But it wasn't really like kids fantasizing on a playground someplace.
Right.
It was really, I needed to leave for a couple hours somehow, and this was the delusion that I used to make it work.
Yeah.
I would collect articles of, I would collect nature scene pictures and put them on the wall of my cell. And what else? There was something else. Oh, I used to listen to sports talk radio, but it wasn't listening to sports talk radio. It was like a lifeline to the outdoors. And maybe the last factor I'll mention was that I placed an ad. So I wanted some outside contact because I essentially did the time by myself. So I wanted to have like some outside contact, and I had the ulterior motive of hoping that at some point in the course of that conversation, what was I doing in prison would come up, and that would be my case to make my pitch that I'm innocent, and I need you to help build the bridge between me and the lawyer and investigator that I need, and because I had read that it happened in other cases.
Oh, absolutely.
So I had gotten in trouble for putting an ad in local newspapers a couple times by the prison authorities. But look, if it's a choice, I'm not going to always be a good boy and put no ads and just stay in prison for the rest of my life.
Hey, I'm going to get out of here.
So another prisoner just suggested that he said, "Why don't you put an ad in the Sacramento Bee?" He's a local. I felt comfortable with that because, I'm pretty damn sure that no correctional officer or security in New York is going to come across the Sacramento Bee out in California. So I placed the ad there, mentioning I'm innocent, I'm looking for a pen pal, DNA doesn't match me, and actually somebody answered the ad, and he kept me going. So he's a California resident, Scott Kiley. He's going to be attending the event later.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
But he wrote me the last couple of years, and I was openly asking the stranger that I had no pre-existing relationship with. I was saying, look, should I quit? Should I just give up? I'm never going to get out of here. Do you think I should just go ahead and commit suicide and be done with all of this?
Shit, yeah.
So he kind of like showed up at the right point. So all of those factors together really were how I survived. But even with all those things, it really was extremely difficult. I had to keep. It wasn't just the loss of freedom, and it wasn't just the physical danger we've talked about, but I also had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up. Thoughts of suicide.
Right.
So all of those things, and really in year 15, and after that, right up to when I was exonerated, that was the point in time that I struggled the most, because at least when I had appeals, I had that hope. At some point, the hope was attached to the letters.
Yeah.
But at the end, I didn't have that. So that was the time period that I struggled the most. And again, after a while, just coming up with new ideas, no people to write, just coming up with new ideas to try, became kind of a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah. So at what point did you, what was the final stages? Like how are you released, and what did that look like? How much time?
Sure. So one of the letters that I wrote in care of I wrote this. So there was a book called Chicken Soup for the Prisoner's Soul, and it has like one chapter from many other books. In each one of it. And I went to at that point I was going to the general library in order to find new ideas of people to write to, trying to get some help. So when I saw the book, and I asked the librarian, let me see that book, and I saw on the back of the book that it had contact info for about half of the authors.
Oh, wow.
So I knew people to write.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So I wrote this book author, Tekla Miller, who a chapter of her book, The Warden Wore Pink, was in that, and I figured, this is a person whose walk of life would have allowed her to have come into contact with somebody, or maybe she's likely to in the future. So I wrote her in care of the publishing company, but someone at the publishing company instead sent it to Claudia Whitman, who was an investigator.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as I sent her materials showing that the DNA didn't match me, she like believed me right away.
Yeah.
And so she said, look, I live in Maine and I have a house in Colorado, so I can't work on your case directly. But what I could do is I could help you with the networking. So she gave me ideas and she tried to get people to take my case.
Yeah.
One of the ideas proved to be the winning one. She suggested I write the Innocence Project, which is a nonprofit organization in Manhattan that frees prisoners across the country where DNA and evidence could potentially demonstrate innocence,
Right.
where no testing's been done. So I wrote them back in 92, 93, but remember the DNA had already been tested.
Right.
So doing testing again, you couldn't do the testing again and then claim it's something new.
Right.
So that wasn't an option back then. So fast forward to year 15, Claudia told me, well, look, the DNA data bank has been created,
Yeah.
so write them again. So I wrote them. I would not have thought to write them again on my own.
Right.
And then she lobbied them to take my case. She got other respected legal entities to lobby them also.
That's awesome.
And then Maggie Taylor, who's a lawyer now, but she was not a lawyer before, and she was working at the Innocence Project, and so the lawyers, again, did not want to take the case because of the pre-existing exclusion.
Yeah.
So they told her no twice, and she presented it a third time using the data bank as the idea.
Yeah.
So getting the legal representation was the key. Second
Absolutely.
thing is the former Westchester District Attorney, Janine Pirro, who does a commentary on television. So she,
I'm familiar.
right. So she was not the DA when I was convicted, but she did take office before my first appeal was decided. So it was her office fighting all 7 of the appeals and blocking several attempts at getting DNA testing. So she left office. Her successor allowed me to have the further testing. So that was the second key. And the third key is that we got lucky that the actual perpetrator's DNA was in the data bank. So they took the DNA that already didn't match me, attached it to the data bank, entered it into the data bank, and it matched the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was only there because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later, who was a school teacher and had 2 children.
Oh, wow.
So the conviction was overturned September 22nd, 2006, with the agreement of the district attorney, and then the charges were later dismissed on November 2nd, 2006 on actual innocence grounds.
Wow. So is that the point in November, basically, when your attorney, shows up and says, "Hey, you're out of here"?
No, that was September 21st.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was a delay or how that all works.
Yeah. So they agreed to to reverse the conviction and that I should be released, but the case was not dismissed. So I had to go back to court November 2nd.
Gotcha.
So
I see.
the attorney, I'll tell you the backstory on that. So the attorney shows up. At this point, I'm not in Elmira anymore. I've been transferred to Sing Sing Correctional Facility,
Okay.
where phrases like "you're up the river" come from, because it's on the Hudson River.
Okay. I've heard it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, called the Big House as well.
Yeah.
So I had been transferred there, and so my cell opens. It's September 21st. So my cell opens up, and the guard yells down, "Visit!" Like, yeah, well, so I go down there and I say, "You sure it's me?" Because I'm not expecting anyone, and
Right.
they have been known to sometimes let the wrong prisoner out for the visit.
I'm sure it happens.
And I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So he called up there and confirmed I had a visit. So, I go to my cell and I get the. So it was kind of like a tradition. You have like a visit shirt, like a good shirt that you wear.
Yeah.
It's all you can really do.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm running down, buttoning this shirt up as I rush to the visiting room, and I remember thinking to myself, like, who the heck came to see
Right.
me?
Yeah.
So I'm hurrying up because I don't want to get caught outside of the visiting room because it's close to the count being done at 11 o'clock. So when they do the count, wherever you are, you're stuck there. So it would cost me a couple of hours if I was not in the visiting room before they started counting. I would be waiting. So I'm hurrying up, and so I come in the visiting room, and this woman that I don't know is waving at me. And I wave back, but I'm thinking she's either mistaking me for somebody else, or maybe she knows me from the visiting room in Elmira.
Yeah.
So I asked the guard, "Well, who came to see me?" And the guard looks at me like I'm nuts and says, "Well, don't you know who came to see you?" And I didn't want the visit to get canceled before I even.
So you're like, yeah.
So exactly, I had pretended. Of course, I know. Yeah, sure. So I walk over to this woman who's waving, because who else am I going to walk over to?
Right.
And she introduces herself as Nina Morrison, my attorney from the Innocence Project, and she says the items have been tested. So I said to her, what do you mean they've been tested? They're not supposed to be tested for like another month. So I've already lost appeals on bizarre technical things. So I'm on the lookout for anything irregular.
Right.
So
can't blame you for that.
So you're giving me bad news. Got it.
Yeah, right. So she says, no, it's been tested. The results match the actual perpetrator. You're going home tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And so
BS, sure.
Yeah, right. So we go back and forth like 3 times, and then I have this 3.5 hour mental paralysis. So I'm sitting there at the visiting room. She's like literally holding my hand, and all these thoughts are running through my head. Yeah. One thought has nothing to do with the next. None of it has anything to do whatsoever with my case.
Yeah.
And she's just listening. Yeah, and she's just listening and not replying. And every now and then she breaks in and says, "Are you ready to talk about tomorrow?" I'm like, no. Look, keep that away from me. No, we're not. I'm not going home tomorrow. We're not talking about that. I can't deal with that. Right. No, we're not talking about this. No, it ain't gonna happen. So
back to my stream of consciousness about everything else.
Yeah. So eventually what made it real is she said, "Look, there's about 20 minutes left in the visit. It's almost 3:00 now, and I have to get your shoe size and the size of your suit, and there's a ton of work to do between now and tomorrow with respect to the media, other preparation." And that's really what made it real. And so I felt better for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a different thought, a different concern or fear came into my mind, which was, well, something's going to happen between now and tomorrow. No. And DA's gonna change her mind, and I'm not.
Yeah, that'd be par for the course at this point.
Exactly right. Yes. So that's how that all went down.
Wow.
But you were, in fact, released the next day.
I was, in fact. Thank God, I was in fact released the next day. Yes, I was.
So what was that? I mean, so you had mentioned earlier, like the technology that what existed then when you were released, and just like how did you acclimate to being out, and where did you go? What did you do?
Sure. So technology was different. So cell phones, GPS, internet didn't exist before. Culture was different. Cities and towns didn't look the same. The same people didn't live there anymore. So it did feel like I was in a parallel world, one that I didn't belong in.
Yeah.
So I stayed with my aunt for a couple of days. My mother by now had left Peekskill. She had moved to Colbiskill, which is in rural upstate New York.
Okay.
So after a few days, I went with her up there. But it was so rural, there really was no chance to rebuild my life. I mean, to give you an idea, bus service was door to door. And you would have to ride in a car for about an hour and a half. So
sounds like where they grew up.
Yeah, we grew up in a very small town.
So a woman named Leester Brown, who's running actually for Peekskill City Council now. So she contacted me through the Innocence Project. She sent $100 for me to get a train ticket and go back to Peekskill. So I didn't actually know her, but she remembered me. I used to play with her son.
Oh, wow.
So, but look, this was my chance to get out of this rural place.
Yeah.
So I packed up the little bit
Peace
that
out,
I had,
let's go. Yeah.
and I went down there to Peekskill, and my plan was just to visit person to person so I could figure out some kind of stability.
Yeah.
So ultimately, this religious community allowed me to stay there for 4 months, and then they told me I had 15 days to find someplace else. So I was a couple of weeks away from a homeless shelter. Mercy, and I quickly learned everybody that I had been meeting. And so in Peekskill, I mean, people would see me, they would honk the horn, they'd come up to me, shake hands with me, and everything like that. And be, "Oh, you ever need anything?" And I used to write their names, everything down in the book and everything. But it was all a bunch of hot air, is what it really was.
Well, yeah, and this is the same community that 15 years prior was cursing your name down the street.
Exactly.
So
right. Yes,
yeah.
It's true. It's true. So, but Mercy College had the dean at Mercy College had arranged for me to get a scholarship to finish the bachelor's degree because it made it into the daily newspaper, a human interest item, that I was 10 classes short of getting the bachelor's. So they lined up the scholarship. And so I contacted the school and I said, look, we're going to do the press conference about me starting school, but look, at this point I've just lost my temporary housing, so I have to make the press conference that I'm about to be homeless. So if anyone's is so inclined to help me, they need to know I have the problem.
So, perfect timing.
So Mercy College upped the ante. They already had agreed to give me the scholarship and they gave me the meal plan, which was good so I could eat.
Right.
So they upped the ante and they allowed me to live on their campus.
Oh, how cool.
That's awesome.
For 6 months. And from there, just before the end of graduating, I found, I was introduced to, is a better way to put it, Human Development Services of Westchester. And it wasn't, they allowed me to, their method of doing things was they would rent an apartment for their clients, and then their clients would just have to pay them 30% of whatever they made in the course of a month, even if that was nothing. So it wasn't because I had been wrongfully in prison, it was because I happened to fit the mental health diagnosis of clients that they did that for. Okay, so that was how I got some stability of housing. I mean, all in all, it took me about 5 years before I got any financial compensation. So I was always passed over for gainful employment. Technology had passed me by, as we mentioned, but it also seemed like none of the employers were willing to have any patience to do any on-the-job training. It was awkward whenever I would meet up with members of my extended family because I knew who they were from memories when I was young, but I was a different person now. So so are they. Stigma, having been in prison for 16 years. I mean, I was there wrongfully, but you were there, so how much that rub off on you, and you know, that was part of it, and you know, it was very lonely as well.
I'm sure.
So it was really.
Can relate. I mean, nobody can relate to that unless they have also, but I'm sure it's not very common.
No,
it's few and far between.
Right, and that was also part of the problem in terms of even finding mental health professionals. They were not used to treating somebody like me. So it was 5 really. So it was, you know, I became a weekly columnist for a newspaper, so I was making money that way. But they only wanted 1 article a week. And I was doing speaking engagements and getting paid for them, but that's not a consistent form of income. So it was, so it was very difficult 5 years. It was particularly hard for me because, remember, I had been in prison from age 17 to 32. So I had never before lived on my own. I hadn't had a driver's license. I had never went shopping before. I had never wrote a check. I never balanced a budget. One time the dean of the college took me shopping, and my plan, which I carried out for a while before I finally adjusted enough, was as far as like the cleaning products. So I would save the empty containers and then bring them with me back to the store so that I knew what to buy. So all those challenges were present, but at the same time, while I was having all of those difficulties, you know, I was an advocate for about 5 years. So I mentioned the writing and speaking, but I was also doing the media interviews, trading privacy for awareness in exchange for, you know, the better awareness of the issues. And I was meeting the elected officials, and I got the scholarship, finished the bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. My thesis was written in wrongful conviction cause and reform. And then I got the compensation, and I decided that, you know, I wanted to keep doing what I was doing, but I wanted to be involved in exonerating people. So I used $1.5 million from what I got to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, and we have been able to get 11 people home. And I mentioned the policy stuff at the beginning, so I won't repeat that. But at some point, it became not enough for me to sit in the front row of the courtroom. You know, I wanted to be able to sit at the defense table and represent some of the clients and make some of the arguments. Hence my foray into law school, and I'm an attorney, and I've entered some of so the foundation has 10 active cases now, and you know, I've entered some of those cases as co-counsel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, I guess, do you want to talk a little bit more about like what you're doing now, and, you know, kind of, you know, actionable things that maybe the listeners can do to help in support of that?
Sure. So so I've entered a few of the cases now as co-counsel. So we're trying to exonerate people. Now there's 10 active cases. There's the policy initiatives that I mentioned. So I'm doing that. But I'm also actively, pursuing donors and various awards. I have a cash prize with it. So we also have our Patreon campaign. So basically, I'm trying to develop the organization further. We're looking to add additional board members, looking to add advisory board members, and I'm looking for large donors, medium size, and even small donors. So basically, we're at capacity right now, and we have a separate 7 cases that are approved that are currently not being worked on because we can only do the 10 that we're doing.
Right.
So we're looking for people to help us to free more innocent people. So with the Patreon campaign, the idea is this: when it comes to political races, candidates of both parties, whether it's high-profile races or presidential races, double-digit millions, triple-digit millions raised largely from small-dollar donors.
Yeah.
So my idea was with the Patreon page, which is designed for people that are willing to be recurring monthly donors. What if 25,000 people were willing to sacrifice $3 to $5 a month on a recurring basis to free innocent people? So that would give us, close to $1 million budget, and we would be able to expand our capacity. We could hire attorneys, investigators, paralegals, other essential personnel, and we could pursue policy changes in more than just New York, Pennsylvania, California. We could come into 3 other states and also do something with regards to the federal justice system.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing now. I'd like to mention that there also is the Amazon Smile program. And so if you register for the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation on Amazon will donate a small percentage of your purchase to the organization without it increasing the cost. So I'm looking for that, and always looking for somebody with a higher profile. I mean, imagine somebody with a really large following that made a short video talking about wrongful conviction, the organization, our track record. Maybe I make a brief cameo appearance and they encourage people to donate. Could really be game changing.
Yeah.
So look, this is not about me anymore. I'm home, I'm free, I'm compensated. I work about 50 to 60 hours a week. I don't get paid for that. I survive from the whatever I earn on the compensation, so that allows me to keep doing the advocacy work. So definitely 100% of whatever is obtained would go to freeing other people, and that's the whole point of why I started the organization, is because I can't forget about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind. Many of the innocence organizations, they're what I call DNA centric. So if there's no DNA, they won't take the case.
Right.
But DNA is only around in 5 to 12% of all serious felony cases. So most of the cases would not be eligible. And to me, I don't agree with that. Because if someone's innocent, they're innocent. If you can prove that, you should do it. Whether it's under a microscope or through good old-fashioned boots on the ground investigative work.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hence having the mission that way.
Yeah. Well, we will be sure to link all of those things in the episode show notes as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I really do appreciate that, and I am the face of the organization, so I do a lot of traditional and non-traditional media. Thank God for new media. We're here.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I feel like that's really opened up, the platforms that we all have a freedom of speech. But if nobody can hear you, it's limited at your exercise. So I love. Podcasts and blogs and Blog Talk Radio, how that's opened up everything for everyone. It's not just the traditional media. So I do these interviews, and I do speaking engagements, across the country, and some internationally. I mean, my ultimate dream is to have a chapter in each state and in each country, because I see wrongful conviction as a worldwide issue. In the countries where we don't hear about wrongful conviction, it's not because they're not happening, it's because nobody's working on the cases, nobody is being exonerated there.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for sharing your story and the work that you're doing. It's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to mention? Or
Sure. Yeah, really quickly, I'd want to mention that I do want to mention Recharge,
Yes.
the bar's reentry game, and it does have a quote from me on the tin, in the front there. Okay. And the formerly incarcerated and all who play this game will bond, laugh, and heal. So I decided to invest in Recharge. I co-own it. Leslie Robinson, who was a guest previously, created the game. But you know, I benefited. I benefited from prisoners that were, you know, committed crimes, that were incarcerated, who suggested I write the law library. I mean, go to the law library, and you know, who kind of schooled me on, you know, survival tactics, what to do in prison, and would try to be good influence. And I've seen a lot of people who really have taken their rehabilitation seriously, and they're leading difference-making, crime-free lives. And so Recharge is my way of trying to give back to those prisoners, and in honor of other people on parole that are doing good work now in the community, hence my wanting to get involved in Recharge. I use the game a lot myself with my family and my friends. I really wish the tool had been around when I was first released. I remember my brother, who's 3.5 years younger than me, he mentioned, he said to me one time, it still sticks in my head pretty vividly. He said, I don't know what to say, I don't know what not to say, I don't know what to ask, I don't know what not to ask. So Recharge steps in the middle, and it removes that awkwardness by those icebreaker type questions. So that was one thing. And the other thing I just wanted to share with people that are listening, you know, I reflect on about my life and my journey, and I think that there's a lot of lessons there, well beyond just wrongful conviction or criminal justice reform. And you know, speaking of the justice reform, and I'll come right back to that thought, the documentary short Conviction, which was on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I give it a watch.
Okay, so produced by Geo Awards, which has gotten into 12 documentary festivals and won 3 awards. So
cool.
I used my platform there. I mean, just for the other justice reform issues. I mean, the fact that it's about me means wrongful conviction is going to get some play anyway, just in and of itself. But I used the platform there really to shed light on a lot of disturbing things that I saw up close and personal while I was wrongfully imprisoned. I mean, I discussed things like, people being denied, worthy candidates being repeatedly denied parole, even though they have bachelor's degrees and really good disciplinary records and have completed other vocational trades and therapeutic programs. Elderly people in prison whose needs.
Sorry. We have to rush. They've been waiting for 45 minutes to clean the room. There's no place left open to eat. I haven't eaten at 6 o'clock my time. Please, please. I'm producing it there. I'm sorry.
No,
you're fine.
We're wrapping up in 1 minute. Yep. Just finishing this Lance answer. So things like elderly people in prison with advanced medical needs that the prison simply can't treat, and prison reform and absence of college education for prisoners. So I use that platform to bring light to really bring light to those issues. But I think that beyond justice reform and wrongful conviction, I think that I reflect on my life. I think that there's a generic formula. I think that when in whatever extreme adverse situation that you're in, I think have a goal, have a realistic plan that you can look at 3 or 4 different ways and feel comfortable with. Be flexible. Remember, the goal's the goal, the plan's not the goal. So work really hard and never quit. And when you're about to give up and you can't go on anymore, just say to yourself that if maybe this was the key moment, and if you'd have kept going, you could have had a breakthrough. And so I just said that to myself, and then I keep going anyway, just to see what would happen on the other side. And when you do make it through, then just reach back and help other people in the same position and do some work on the preventative side. And I know that message can extend, say, to people who are homeless or debilitating illness or a domestic abuse survivor, or sexual assault survivor, or you name the extreme difficulty, large, small, whatever, it applies to all of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's inspiring.
Thank you.
But thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Of course. And then, again, all the resources and links will be in the description, and we will catch you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Editing Jamie popping back in real quick just to thank you all again for listening to this week's a little bit different episode, and we do really hope that you enjoyed it. And again, please check out Jeff and all of the wonderful things he does. The links will be in the description. Thank you and have a good one. We'll see you next time.